5 reasons elderly women choose to live alone instead of remarrying. Why are more elderly women choosing solitude over settling? The answer might surprise you and challenge everything society tells us about what women should want as they age. Today, I'm exploring 5 profound reasons why more elderly women are choosing solitude over settling, insights that could transform how you think about love, independence, and what truly makes life worth living. Meet Dorothy, a widow who lost her husband at 51 after a love story that began on her 18th birthday and lasted through his final words, "I love you, babe." Society expected her to find someone new, to not waste her remaining years alone. Instead, she made a choice that's becoming increasingly common among older women. She chose herself. Would I like to have a special someone in my life? Yes, but not enough to settle for just anyone. I want it all, and if I can't have it all, I'm perfectly fine with things as they are. Dorothy's story represents a quiet revolution happening among elderly women, a generation that's redefining what fulfillment looks like in later life. These aren't women who've given up on love. They're women who've learned to love themselves enough to protect their peace, their independence, and their standards. If you're a woman who's ever felt pressured to find a partner before it's too late, or if you've wondered whether choosing to be alone could actually be choosing happiness, subscribe right now, because what I'm about to share challenges the narrative that women must be partnered to be complete. Reason number 1: the power of protecting sacred memories. Dorothy's first concern reveals something profound about the nature of deep love and loss. It wouldn't be fair to any guy that wanted to be with me because I might be comparing him to my husband all the time. I don't know if I would or not, but I just don't want the hassle. This isn't about being stuck in the past. It's about honoring a love so profound that anything less feels like betrayal. When you've experienced a marriage that was truly partnership, where you held hands through death itself, the thought of settling for casual companionship or convenient arrangement can feel like dishonoring not just your late spouse, but your own capacity for deep connection. The ancient Greeks understood this concept through their word agape, love so pure and complete that it transcends physical existence. For women like Dorothy, their marriages weren't just relationships. They were spiritual unions that death ended physically, but not emotionally. The idea of replacing such a connection with something lesser feels not just impossible, but wrong. But there's another layer to this protection of sacred memory. Dorothy understands something crucial about human nature, that new relationships inevitably involve comparison, especially when you've experienced profound love. Rather than put a potential partner in the impossible position of competing with a ghost or put herself through the pain of constant comparison, she chooses to honor her marriage by keeping its memory intact. This choice reflects a mature understanding of love itself. Dorothy knows the difference between the desperate need for companionship that might drive someone to settle and the authentic desire for connection that accepts nothing less than genuine partnership. She's chosen to keep her standards high rather than lower them to accommodate what's available. The spiritual dimension adds another complexity. Then there's the thing of being united with my loved ones in heaven. If I had 2 husbands, how would that work? This concern, whether you share her religious beliefs or not, represents the deep spiritual connection some people feel to their deceased spouses, a bond they don't want to complicate with earthly relationships that might feel like betrayal of eternal promises. This protection of sacred memory isn't about living in the past. It's about refusing to dilute the most meaningful experience of your life with something that doesn't measure up to its significance.
Reason number 2: the harsh reality of limited options. Dorothy's brutally honest assessment of available men reveals a truth that many elderly women face but few discuss openly. After trying to date again, she found men fell into predictable categories. Friends she didn't want to complicate relationships with, married men she wouldn't consider, and what she describes as slack-jawed, drunken mitwits, the largest group. Later, she added a fourth category. They look like my grandfather. Of course, I completely ignore the fact that I probably look like their grandmother. Her humor masks a real frustration, the disconnect between how she feels internally, unchanged from her younger self, and the reality of age-appropriate options. This isn't superficial pickiness, it's the result of simple mathematics. By the time women reach their 60s and 70s, the pool of available, emotionally healthy, compatible men has shrunk dramatically. Many good men are already married, still grieving their own losses, dealing with serious health issues, or carrying emotional baggage that make them poor relationship candidates. The men who are available often fall into problematic categories: those who never learn to be truly intimate partners, those who view women primarily as caregivers for their declining years, or those whose expectations for relationships are based on outdated gender roles that don't appeal to women who've tasted independence. Research supports Dorothy's observation. Studies show that older men are more likely to remarry than older women, partly because they're more likely to seek partners who will provide domestic care, while older women are more likely to prioritize emotional connection and genuine partnership. This creates a mismatch in what each gender is seeking. There's also the practical reality that many available older men come with significant baggage: financial complications from previous marriages, adult children who resent new relationships, health problems that would turn romance into caregiving, or social habits like excessive drinking that developed during lonely years. Dorothy's categories reflect a sophisticated understanding of what she's willing to accept. She won't risk good friendships for uncertain romance. She won't compromise her values by getting involved with unavailable men, and she won't pretend to find unattractive or incompatible men appealing just to have companionship. This selectivity isn't evidence of impossible standards. It's evidence of hard-won wisdom about what relationships actually require to be fulfilling rather than burdensome.
Reason number 3. The sweet taste of hard-won independence. I was independent and living alone before my husband and I married, so I just went back to living how I used to, Dorothy explains. This simple statement reveals something profound about the nature of female independence and why many elderly women guard it so fiercely. Dorothy had lived independently from age 18 to 30 before marrying. She knew how to take care of herself, make her own decisions, and create a life that satisfied her. When widowhood returned her to independence, it wasn't a frightening unknown. It was a familiar state she could inhabit with confidence. But this isn't just about practical skills. It's about something deeper: the intoxicating freedom of making decisions based solely on your own preferences, needs, and desires. After decades of considering a partner's opinions, compromising on everything from dinner choices to vacation destinations, many women discover they've missed the pure autonomy of single life. The sociologist Bella DePola's research on single women reveals what she calls the singles advantage, the tendency for unmarried women to be more socially connected, more likely to help family and friends, and often more fulfilled than their married counterparts. For elderly women especially, singleness can mean freedom from the domestic labor and emotional caretaking that traditional marriages often required. There's also the practical reality that many elderly women have spent decades caring for others, children, aging parents, and often ailing husbands. The prospect of entering another relationship that might eventually involve caregiving responsibilities can feel exhausting rather than appealing. They've earned their rest from being someone else's primary caretaker. Dorothy mentions that she and her much younger friend work on trucks together, an image that perfectly captures the freedom of elderly single life.
She can pursue interests without worrying about a partner's approval or competing time demands. She can travel when and where she wants, spend money according to her own priorities, and structure her days around her own rhythms. This independence isn't selfish, it's self-preserving. Many elderly women have discovered that they're better companions to friends and family when they're not stressed by the demands of maintaining a romantic relationship that doesn't truly fulfill them. The independence that comes with age and wisdom allows women to distinguish between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the painful absence of connection. Solitude is the peaceful presence of self-sufficiency. Many elderly women have learned to transform potential loneliness into chosen solitude.
Reason number 4. The economics of emotional labor. Though Dorothy doesn't explicitly mention this, her story hints at something many elderly women understand intuitively: the exhausting economics of emotional labor in traditional relationships and their reluctance to sign up for it again. Research by sociologist Arlie Hochschild reveals that women typically perform disproportionate emotion work in relationships, managing not just their own feelings, but their partner's emotional needs, social calendar, family relationships, and often their health concerns. For women who have spent decades in this role, the prospect of resuming such responsibilities can feel overwhelming. Many elderly women have reached a stage where they've learned to meet their own emotional needs effectively. They've developed friendships that provide support without the complex reciprocal obligations of romantic partnership. They've created routines and environments that nurture their well-being. The idea of disrupting this carefully crafted emotional ecosystem for a relationship that might demand more than it gives feels like poor economics. There's also the reality that older men, statistically more likely to have neglected their emotional development and social connections throughout their lives, often enter relationships with elderly women expecting them to fill roles as social coordinator, emotional processor, and general life manager. Women who have finally escaped these expectations may be reluctant to resume them. The concept of emotional labor extends beyond feelings to include all the invisible work that makes relationships function: remembering birthdays, maintaining social connections, managing household details, coordinating activities. Many elderly women have discovered they prefer managing these tasks for themselves rather than taking on the doubled burden of managing them for a partner who may not reciprocate. Dorothy's comment about not wanting the hassle speaks to this deeper understanding. She's not referring just to the hassle of dating, but to the hassle of reorganizing her entire emotional and practical life around another person's needs and preferences. This isn't cynicism about love, it's wisdom about the true costs of relationships. Many elderly women have learned that some forms of companionship are more expensive than solitude, not in financial terms, but in terms of energy, freedom, and peace of mind. The decision to remain single becomes, in this context, not a rejection of love, but a sophisticated calculation about what kinds of love are worth their investment at this stage of life.
Reason number 5. The evolution to chosen family and unconventional love. Dorothy's update about her relationship with a much younger man, half her age, who helps her work on trucks and travels with her, reveals the 5th reason many elderly women choose singleness. They're creating new forms of love and companionship that meet their needs without the complications of traditional romantic relationships. Talking to him is like talking to a good girlfriend, Dorothy explains. There is nothing physical between us, but from the first time we met, we decided we were kindred spirits. This relationship gives her companionship, shared activities, emotional connection, and mutual support. Many of the benefits of partnership without the sexual, financial, or domestic complications that traditional relationships might involve. This represents a sophisticated understanding of human connection that transcends conventional categories. Dorothy and her friend have created what sociologists call chosen family, relationships based on affinity rather than blood or legal ties, designed to meet specific needs rather than fulfill social expectations. The beauty of their arrangement, calling herself his Yankee grandma, is that it allows them to enjoy each other's company while sidestepping social judgment about age-inappropriate romance. They've found a socially acceptable framework for an unconventional but deeply satisfying connection. This trend toward chosen family and unconventional relationships reflects a broader shift among elderly women toward creating support systems that work for their actual lives rather than conforming to traditional relationship models. Some develop intensely close friendships with other women. Others create multi-generational relationships with younger people who bring energy and fresh perspective. Still others build communities of similarly situated individuals who share interests and values. Dorothy's story illustrates that the choice to remain single doesn't necessarily mean choosing isolation. Instead, it can mean choosing flexibility in how you connect with others, freedom from the sexual and romantic expectations that complicate traditional partnerships, and the ability to create relationships that serve your actual needs rather than society's expectations. The relationship with her young friend also provides something crucial that traditional elderly romance often lacks: fun. They giggle together, work on trucks, plan adventures. There's a playfulness and lightness that might be harder to achieve in a relationship weighed down by expectations about commitment, sexuality, and conventional partnership roles. This evolution toward chosen family represents perhaps the most positive aspect of elderly women's choice to remain single. It's not a rejection of love, but an expansion of what love can look like when freed from conventional constraints.
Dorothy's story, and the stories of thousands of women like her, reveal something revolutionary: that choosing to be alone can be the most loving thing you do for yourself, and that solitude can be a form of self-respect rather than self-defeat. The 5 reasons we've explored: protecting sacred memories, facing limited quality options, treasuring hard-won independence, avoiding exhausting emotional labor, and creating unconventional forms of love, represent a sophisticated understanding of what relationships require and what life can offer beyond traditional partnership. These women aren't bitter, desperate, or giving up on love. They're making informed choices based on decades of experience about what truly brings fulfillment. They've learned to distinguish between the social pressure to be partnered and their own authentic desires for connection and companionship. Perhaps most importantly, they've discovered something that younger generations are still learning: that being alone and being lonely are entirely different experiences. Solitude, when chosen consciously, can be profoundly peaceful and fulfilling. It can provide space for self-discovery, creativity, and deep friendships that might be impossible within the demands of romantic partnership. Dorothy's final words capture this perfectly. "I want it all, and if I can't have it all, I'm perfectly fine with things as they are." This isn't settling. It's the opposite of settling. It's refusing to accept less than what you know you deserve, even if that means living differently than society expects. The women who choose singleness in their later years are teaching us something profound about love, standards, and self-worth. They're showing us that sometimes the most loving relationship you can have is the one with yourself, and that sometimes protecting your peace is more important than avoiding loneliness. Their choice challenges our assumptions about what women need to be happy and fulfilled. It suggests that the desperation to be partnered at any cost might be a young person's game.
and that true wisdom might lie in knowing when to say yes to love and when to say no to everything that isn't love. If Dorothy's story resonated with you, if it challenged your assumptions about elderly women and relationships, or if it gave you permission to value your own standards over social expectations, please subscribe and join our community of people who believe that every stage of life offers its own forms of wisdom and fulfillment. Share in the comments, what aspects of Dorothy's choice do you understand or admire? Have you experienced the peace that comes from choosing yourself over settling? Your perspective could provide exactly the validation another woman needs to hear. Subscribe for more honest conversations about aging, relationships, and the courage to live according to your own values rather than others' expectations. Because, as Dorothy proves, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose the life that actually makes you happy, regardless of what anyone else thinks about it. After all, a life well lived isn't measured by relationship status. It's measured by authenticity, peace, and the courage to honor what truly serves your soul.